I mean, to the extent that there was some reality to the war, it was no more complex than the reason that the British won a battle in the 12th century because their bow and arrows would shoot further than the other guys so they could stand further back. Sort of the real part of the war may have been along those dimensions. But the hyper-real part was to watch the nightly Scud watch, the Scud explosions on TV. And it's hard to even evoke the feeling of togetherness the American people had in the glow of the television set, watching, and I mean even the names are straight out of Steven Spielberg. Patriot missiles, blowing up Scuds. I mean, the poetry of the hyper-real is something, I mean, Walt Disney wouldn't do something that hokey. Patriots versus Scuds. I mean, that's worse than Darth Vader or something, I mean. So the Patriots would blow up the Scuds. Of course, later we found out, according to the Israeli military, that there were only, what, 1 or 2 confirmed hits. CNN, of course, showed those over and over and over again to us, so that as we watched the war, since those hits could be simulated, the hyper-real feeling of continuing victory and success of our technology was reinforced daily, capped off by the moral equivalent of a sportscaster's comment at the end of a game every night when the military people would get out and roll out the scorecard for the day. Very much like we do after the Bulls and Phoenix play, and we come out and sort of like the U.S. is Michael Jordan, you know, and the other side is Barkley, and Michael scored 55, Patriot missile shots, and the other side 28, and we won, you know, against the third best team in the world, the third largest army. Well, by the end of the article, I was wondering, I was going, you know, that's just way too cynical even for me. I can't buy that argument. And then I began to think about what the war looked like on TV, and a comment then I just had to start trying to find people who had been in the war. And sure enough, I found someone in Durham who had been, you know, a lot of North Carolina people go to the war. I found a young pilot, and he said, it was very exciting. And then he went on to explain to me how the sites that they used in order to, you know, fire their smart bombs were just like the games in the arcade that he grew up with. Said, you know, no way in the world could he have had better practice than he got in those arcades to fire his smart bombs. And I mean, it had passed him by that the real had happened, even though he was really there. I talked to a woman who had been on the ground in a Jeep for most of it. And she went, oh, the desert's so big and the sand. She said, but I really didn't get a feel for it till I got home and saw what my husband had taped. Why? Because the little individual actors sink into insignificance compared to the damn spectacle of the thing. The spectacle of it. I mean, when humans were less important than God, we could understand because he built everything. When we're less important than a Nintendo, we get confused. That's when we start thinking we're under siege. It's when Billy says, oh yes, you can kill mom and dad, but leave the Nintendo. Then we're rightfully upset. The postmodern trajectory leaves us in a situation where drawing the line between the real and the unreal is no longer merely philosophical, but a practical day-to-day issue. See, this is what I want to drive home. We're not off in some fairyland. This is a practical day-to-day issue of figuring out what's a simulation and what's not. Is this guy really an insurance salesman, or is he here to rob me? You know, I mean, this is no longer Cartesian doubt that one has to conjure up in a meditation. This is a wide, radical doubt about the very ground beneath our feet, it's the nature of whether it's real or not. Baudrillard says it's best at this point to simply face it that what we are witnessing is the end of the world, the end of human beings, and he thinks that there's no reason to be sad or upset or cynical about it. In fact, Baudrillard calls it the ecstasy of communication. I mean, I'm trying to do this in a kind of ironic way. I don't know how one presents this kind of material. I suggest you read books by this person. I brought one called Fatal Strategies, about things one might do under such conditions. Anyway, no, he thinks that just that rather than this being occasion for some deep gloom, the ecstasy of communication means that we should go ahead and realize that America has won the Cold War. America is utopia realized. This is the country everyone dreamed of. It is, of course, with all that we know that goes along with it now, it turns out to be, like all utopias, sadly disappointing. But weren't they always? Weren't they always? Every utopia, in some sense, boring and sadly disappointing? Well, Baudrillard says no, we have to, in spite of this, we have to look upon the end of man, the world, and so on as an opportunity. Because what were these concepts anyway? Like man and world, except concepts by which the world was regulated, policed, mapped, and controlled. All four of which are becoming more and more difficult to do under this situation of rapidly increasing complexity, which I've mentioned many times, and I mean system complexity at every level. Rapid increase in information technologies and invasions directly into the human body that interface it with machines. That goes all the way from plastic surgery to artificial hearts and implants to virtual reality, where we'll be able to make a person who can't walk feel as though he can walk or she can walk. And I mean, this is not a technology I dreamed up. They're trying now to develop cheap, marketable versions of this, as I speak here right now. So Baudrillard doesn't want us to go, oh, it's the end of the world, it's the apocalypse. No, it's too late for that. It's already happened. If you wanted to moan, it was sort of like the moaning curve is past now, and it's time to try to sort of readjust to the flows in some way. And Baudrillard suggests a whole series of what he calls fatal strategies by which we might be able to protect what he calls our fractal selves. If you know what fractals look like in geometry, little reproduced pictures out like this is one way to think of it. Our fractal selves, split, reproducible. We have life changes now, and they've become not changes in our life. For example, to show you the distance that we've traveled, not like Augustine's conversion to Christianity, when he hears, or thinks he hears the voice of God saying, tole, lege, take, read, and he reads the scripture and becomes a Christian, and then he's a new man. He's born again. No, that's over now. Now we change, all right. We change rapidly. We change, as I said, professions 6 or 7 or 8 times, and we change who and what we are the way we used to change our clothes and our fashion. I mean, there are kids now who get through college and they're 6 different people before their junior year. 2 months as a bohemian, 2 months as a pre-med student, 2 months as a preppy, 2 months as a poet, a month and a half as a journalist, a month and a half as an ecologist, a month, and all the requisite uniforms for it. None of it felt, none of it part of affect. A fad, a personality formed as a fad, as a fashion, as an ornament. I mean, this really doesn't overstate the case for me.